Hi all. So it's been a long time since I made a video, but I thought I'd get this channel going again. Alright, so especially now that I have a different project vehicle behind me, old Bill here as I've lovingly named it, which is the 1967 Ford F100. A lot of problems. When I got it, it didn't run. Had broken manifold bolts, had a carburetor that was cracked and junk. The timing was way off. But anyways, it's running now, and now we're just doing, or I'm doing little odds and ends to kind of make it a good daily driver. So it's daily driven right now, but just a few things that, you know, if they're not addressed, then it's probably not going to be good down the road. So anyways, today we're going to go over making, well, I guess fixing a battery hold down. This guy right here. So, an overview of Bill. So you see, sorry, it's dark, and there's fireworks going off everywhere. Cool history about it. It was actually driven by this guy named Bill, and you can pronounce the last name. And it was bought brand new by a oil company in Montana. So you still see some of the old lettering on it. And there's paperwork in the truck that actually shows service records and everything for it. It's actually kind of cool about it, but it's old and rusty, and actually surprisingly it doesn't have much cancer at all. It's got a little hole in the floorboard, but other than that, all the body panels and everything are solid, except for the seam right here. You see I put some rust stop on it. It's getting a little pitted, and the bed's getting a little pitted, but no major holes in it. Just nice patina. Ooh. But anyways, our problem today is battery hold down. So trying to keep this thing from tipping over when I turn and welding itself to something on the motor. So in the little toolbox that somebody had made for it like a long time ago under here looks like maybe the original hold down, maybe not, I don't know, but it's pretty old, and man, it's probably needs replaced in all reality, but hey, I'm gonna make it work. So fits on here like so, but the problem is it looks like this, or at least the rods, got rusted and they replaced it. And if we put it in the little hold downs, it's way too long and the threads don't go down. And instead of putting washers and spacers and all kinds of nastiness on there, we are just going to cut it off, cut new threads, and be happy about ourselves. Now excuse all of the junk laying around because my life's always in chaos. But here you can see one of them I've already done. So you see how much really needed to be taken off of it. And at one time, it almost looks like somebody welded a stud to it and then put threads over the top of it or something, because this up here is considerably bigger than the material down below. So not exactly sure what happened there, but we're gonna have to cut this off and then put some new threads in it so it'll actually fit our application. So let's get to doing it. Alright, so now I've got it cut off. Just put it in the vise, cut it off with a hacksaw so it matches the length of our one that we just did. Now, I always find it easier if the camera focuses. Oh, there we go. Kinda, sorta. But I always find it easier if I take this to a bench grinder and then kind of put a taper up here at the end, kind of taper it in, and it helps me at least start putting new threads on there. So to get a die on and get it started as we go down, rather than starting, you know, at a hard edge. It's a lot harder that way, at least for me. Anyways, so we're gonna take it over there and put a taper on it. All right, so now took it to the bench grinder. We've got a taper on it, as you can see. So nothing super crazy about it. So now it's time. Let's get our die. There's a lot of ways you can go about picking a die. Most of the times I just kind of not just eyeball it, but there were some threads left on there, so you go, there's a few threads left, and you start putting dies on until, well, they fit. And this one, I know it's coarse just by looking at it, So, and it ended up being a 1/4 inch 20 or course thread. So, or national course is what that means on there when you see DNC. But anyways, a little plug about this guy here, which is one of my best purchases ever. It's actually by Irwin. I mean, they're not the best ever as far as taps and dies go, but they're a heck of a lot better than the Harbor Freight stuff that you buy. So they come with the whole metric set down here that goes up to, looks like 9mm, and then up here, which it goes to 7/16. So most of the stuff legitimately that you're gonna do, and over here with taps goes up to 1/2 inch, and then over here looks like it goes to 12mm. Gives you thread pitch gauges for standard and then metric. Gives you some different size for taps, to put taps in. You have your handle that locks, which is nice because my old set didn't lock and it was a total pain. So it's actually a pretty legit set, and I think they are running nowadays, or at least when I got it, it's right around $200. I think it was a little less than $200. So, and you'd be surprised how much you use them when you have the tools. So definitely quality money spent on quality tools. All right. So now, whenever you're doing this, you want to put it, well, in some place where you can have control over it, which in my case is a vise, because cutting threads, you got to put quite a bit of force on them. So there's two sides to a die. If you're not super familiar, you've got one that's tapered, because it cuts threads not all at once, but gradually as it goes through the die. So it cuts deeper and deeper and deeper as it goes through. So you want the tapered end, is what you're going to start with. So you're going to put it in the tool, so the tapered end is facing the bottom, and then lock it in. And then when you start, the start is crucial. If you get crooked right off the bat, boy, you're going to be crooked the rest of the way. It's really hard to fix. So, in our case, there are threads starting off, but they're all sorts of mangled up. So we're kind of starting from new. So you want to make sure you're straight on there, and then the first to start threads, you're going to have to push on it. But you want to push and then turn to get threads started in it. Oh. And there, we've started. So, and as you go down, it's going to cut more and more and more. And then, once you start feeling it bind up, like it was really easy and right there it's getting hard to turn, you want to back up. That clears the throat of it. So as it curls, or as it cuts, there's little curls of metal that come in these little holes here, here on the sides. And then, what you want to do is when you back them up, it shears those off. Right, and clears that whole area out, and then you can go again. So then a lot of times, since it does cut as a taper, it'll actually get in the grooves where it cuts as well, and it gets that all cleared out and doesn't bind up. Now, if you bind these up too much, these are hardened so that they'll keep their cutting edge and they'll cut. But if you bind them up and you really just force it and you don't back it up and clear it out every once in a while, then you can actually break these. Because, since it is hardened, it's also brittle, too. So these are not going to bend, they're just going to pop, they're just going to break, which is no good. So, I will continue on this here, and see what happens. So we're all done. As you see, threads are cut, beautiful. It's close-ish. It'll work the way it is. I could take it down. Actually, I might take it down a little bit farther, but you get the point. So our new threads are cut now in the little. One thing that I forgot to mention is I like to keep something like this. Now, it doesn't have to be spray oil, but it could be oil in a can, anything. They actually make some specific stuff called Tap Magic. That is an oil that you use when you're using tap and dies, and also like lathes and things like that. And what it does is it just kind of helps the cutting process. So whenever it gets bound up or it gets super tight, I like to back it off, put a little bit of oil in there, either WD-40 or if I don't have any of that around, I'll just put oil. You know, I got a little bit of motor oil in an oil can that I use for things like wheel studs and things like that. But and it just helps to get you a bit of a smoother cut, and it also dissipates some of the heat. Now, I just got done with this, and this is all a solid piece of metal here as far as the holder goes, and it gets so hot. You can imagine with all the friction, it's, you know, it's cutting new threads, it's cutting pieces of metal out. It gets so hot that the actual ends of the tool are warm, and the actual tool itself is pretty darn hot. I wouldn't necessarily want to hold on to it like I would want to anyways, but yeah, just kind of helps with that. So have some oil or some spray oil laying around when you're doing things like this. All right, here we are, put it in. Got some bolts, some nuts and some washers. Put locks in there because this whole truck shakes like a dog on the 4th of July, so shouldn't come loose now. But went down in the hold downs, and there we are. Perfect. So, not the prettiest job ever, but it's not going to fall off and weld itself to the motor. So, muy bueno. Could have been better, so could have measured these a little bit closer, but the actual tray where it comes in is higher up on this side than it is on the other, so which accounted for this one being longer than the other one. So knowing that, I could come off and cut that off, but you know, if I ever restore the truck, I'll probably get a new hold down that isn't rusty and about to fall apart, that I can bend with my hand, but for now, it'll do just fine. Alright, so that's it. Fixed our battery hold down. Hopefully you learned a little bit. At least those of you who are new to using some of the tools that I was using. So taps and dies and things like that. So we could have just bought a new one. Actually, I've got a new one laying around, but why do that when I've got a little bit of extra time and I can make something with my hands? It seems like that's something that's lost, especially in some of the younger generations. They don't know how to do anything with their hands, so you gotta take pride. You take pride in making things with your bare hands, don't you? Or at least I do. Anyway, so all right, well, if you liked it, push like, put a comment. So I'm gonna start answering comments now, now that I have a little bit of time here during the summer. So all right, thanks for watching, guys.